In the decade of the 1980s, we were really busy. Ted was becoming very well known even nationally because of the work he had done with the VICA program and the Skills Olympics. And I often went with him in the summers because I didn't have school. And we went to Oklahoma and Kansas and once to Louisville, Kentucky for contests. And then in 1983, he was asked to be an official observer of the United States team that was going to the International Skills Olympics to be held in Linz, Austria. And so his way would be paid, and I decided to go. I would go with him. It would be an economical way for both of us to get to see some of Europe. And so we did, and we went in a group from the United States, and we enjoyed the contest very much. The people of Austria were very friendly, and besides the contest, one day we were able to take a train over to Vienna and do some sightseeing there, and we enjoyed that. The contest lasted 9 days, and over the weekend, one of the things that I just thought about was that we decided that we would like to go and see what the native people did on Saturday night. So we asked the concierge at the hotel where was a good place to go dancing. And he said, disco. And we said, no, not disco, papa. And so he asked the taxi driver, and they came up, yes, a place in about 11 or 12 miles out in the country where on Saturday nights they had dances. So he picked us up and made arrangements to take us out there and then drive us back. And when we came in, the taxi driver took us and told the man at the beginning something about we could understand the word Texas. And when we came in, the man signaled for the band, and they, da-dam, and he introduced us as J.R. Ewings from Texas. Oh, we were the stars. They gave us a special table, and it was Ted and I and Mr. and Miss Stanford. And what was so interesting about it was the band would change hats every time they played. They put on their alpine hats, and they played papa music, polkas, and the like, and the people would dance, and they'd take that hat off, and then they would put on a bow tie, and they would play a Viennese waltz, and they would all waltz around like classical music. And then, I guess in our honor, or maybe they did this all the time, but he said something about special for J.R. Ewing, and they all put on cowboy hats, and they played San Antonio Rose, and he said, Bob Wills and Texas Playboys. So they knew that was an interesting thing and a fun time, part of our trip. Also, after the 9 days in Linz, we did take another 1-week tour of going back to where our plane would be. We had a real nice trout dinner in the Alps on the way back. We went through Liechtenstein and on into France, where we saw the Notre Dame Cathedral, and then we stopped at Dachau concentration camp. That was a very sobering thing. And then on up to Luxembourg to the American Cemetery, where General Patton is buried, because one of the contestants from the United States also had an uncle that was buried there, and his family would have all come and brought something special to put on his grave. And then we completed our trip by a leisurely boat ride back down the Rhine, passing old castles and an ancient monastery that had been built in 1000 AD, and seeing the beautiful vineyards that were growing along and ended up back at Frankfurt where we got the plane back home. So that was a very nice thing in 1983. And Angela was still in college, and Alicia had already finished her nursing school in 81, and she had met John Nicosia when she took her Volkswagen into his VW shop for some work, and they began dating, and they got married in December of 81. And John found a shop for sale in Lorena and bought that, and then they purchased a home and moved out close to where we were, so we saw more of them. Also, in 1983, I was asked to be president of the Texas State Teachers Association chapter of the small schools surrounding Waco in McLennan County. It was like Conley ISD and McGregor ISD and China Spring and Lorena and Bruce Valetti. And so I served that for a couple of year term. And I was really busy with that, having to make arrangements for all the meetings and get the newsletters out. And so I was busy when we got back from Austria. And then in 1984, we had another fun time when we went to San Angelo for my parents' 54th wedding anniversary. They renewed their 50th anniversary in 1984. They had been married in 1934. And they had a renewal of their vows and a nice reception and dinner dance. And us four girls sang at the dinner dance, us four sisters. And then there's a picture of the entire Babb family at that time, Ted Babb family, at their reception. Well, 1985, Ted's sister Evelyn had to have open heart surgery, and it was successful, but she also then developed cancer and was not doing real well. And in 85, we also got to go again, Ted as a judge for the Skills Olympics in Osaka, Japan. And so our first stop on the way over there was 2 or 3 days in Honolulu. And we enjoyed that very much. We went to a nightclub. We went to the beach, did some windsurfing-like things. And then we met my cousin, Shirley Daniel, who lives in Honolulu because she's a professor at the University of Hawaii there. And so we had a nice time there. And then we went on to Osaka, Japan for the contest. And we were pretty well tied up with Ted being a judge, but we did get one day to take a bullet train on up to Tokyo and see the sights there. That was an interesting thing. I'd never been on a bullet train, and when it zoomed into the station, the people rushed off, and then they had workers that were called pushers that were pushing people onto it as fast as they could, and you had to really watch or you'd stumble into the person next to you. And they filled that train. It was standing room only, like nose to nose, and then it was zoomed off to Tokyo and got there in just a few minutes. That was interesting. And then we came back to Osaka. And after the contest was over, because we were already in the Far East, some of us had decided to take an extra 1-week side trip into mainland China. China had opened up for tourism under Nixon's presidency, and so people were beginning to travel there some. That was an interesting thing. We saw acrobatic things. We saw Tiananmen Square. And one day, the tour took us to an underground city. built completely under Beijing, a whole city stocked and ready in case of nuclear war. Had everything you would need. You know, it was just a city built underground, and they talked about that it was begun during World War II under Chiang Kai-shek and his people, and then completed with Chinese labor in case of a nuclear war. Then we also, a highlight to the trip for me was walking on the Great Wall. As a girl growing up on a gravel road in West Texas, that was something I never thought I'd get to do. It was not real easy walking because it was a lot uphill and down over those hills that the wall had been built on, but it was really an interesting time. Our flight from Japan had been pretty good. We had requested non-smoking because so many people smoked at that time, and it really irritated my throat, gave me allergies. And the only non-smoking part was upstairs of this wide-body plane behind the pilots. There were 18 first-class seats up there. So we were put up there, and the bottom part where it was all coach was like 500 people all smoking. It was like a chimney down there. It was so full of smoke. But we had a bathroom and everything upstairs, and our own individual lady to serve us, bring us food and drinks. So that was pretty neat. Well, 1986 came along, and Evelyn's health deteriorated. She got some good days with a clinical trial that she was under for cancer, but she didn't last long. And in May of 1986, when Angela graduated from University of Texas with her CPA degree and business administration, Evelyn died. And her funeral was to be on the same day that Angela's exam for CPA was. And Uncle Lloyd, Angela's Uncle Lloyd, called her and said, "Your aunt would not want you to miss the exam to come to her funeral. She knew that you loved her." And so Angela stayed and took the exam, and then she rushed when she was finished back to San Angelo to see her grieving Uncle Lloyd. Well, that was two great things that happened. Her graduating from college and was putting Evelyn away, which was not that great. And about 11 months later, Lloyd passed away. And within the next year, so did Babb. That was all of Ted's main family. And he remarked that it was really hard to be the youngest in the family and have to put the rest of them away. But of course, as I know, that's not always true, because I've now outlived 4 of my younger siblings. Well, Angela went to work after graduation for one of the big 8 companies, business companies in the United States, called Ernst & Young. And she was to work in their office in Fort Worth, and so she moved there, and they put her to auditing hospitals, which turned out to be very great for her career as it came out. She had also been dating a boy she met in high school named Steve Bass, and they got married in October of 1986. Had a nice wedding, and they bought a home in Mansfield, and Steve moved up there where she was working in Fort Worth, and he was working part-time. He had some skills as a plumber, and then he was also going to University of Texas at Arlington working on his degree. 1987 came along, and Ted was given another honor. This time, Mr. Dooley, the same man who had sent his information to Texas A&M to be hired at James Conley Technical School, which became TSTI, sent a request for biography for Ted because he was nominating him for Distinguished Alumni at Angelo State University, where he was a professor. So I wrote all the stuff and the awards that Ted had received and the things he had done since he had left there, and he was chosen. So in 1987, we went to San Angelo Angelo State University for their homecoming, where Ted received alumnus from SAC, and another young man received alumnus from ASU. But that was quite an honor to be honored by the school where you had gone. That was also the year that we went back to Oklahoma for the Skills Olympics thing, and we took our oldest grandchild, Gwen, with us that year. It was the first time. And she had a blast, and we even went out to dinner one night, and she had a Shirley Temple to drink with her bread at the beginning, and like her first drink, which of course we know is not alcohol, but there's a picture of her drinking her Shirley Temple. And the next year, we were able to take her and DL with us, and then we took both of them. It was held in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and outside of Tulsa is a permanent place where they have an outdoor theater that every year puts on the musical Oklahoma with real wagons and horses and all that, and we took them to that. And Gwen still talks about that's still always been one of her favorite musicals since she got to go to that. Well, that was fun, and DL enjoyed it too, and the only thing bad that happened there was coming home one night from somewhere. We parked in the parking garage, and I was on the back seat of a sliding door van that we had. DL was riding up front with his grandpa, who was driving, and we parked in the parking garage, and I stepped out. My shoes had leather soles, and I stepped on a spot of oil, and as I raised my other foot to step down, my right foot slid out, and I went boom, boom, hit the ground, hit the side of the floor on my bottom. And the kids went, oh! And of course, Ted Babb said, well, Virginia, we can't take you out in public, which was his joke, instead of saying, are you hurt, and that made me laugh. And so I got up, I was okay. But the next time we went on a trip, I did get hurt. That happened in February of 1988 because Ted was also asked to go to the Skills Olympics, which was to be held in Sydney, Australia. And since Australia is in the southern hemisphere, their summer is February. And so instead of our summer, it was winter for us. But we did go, and we flew out of San Francisco and stopped in Hawaii for a refuel, and then on into Sydney, Australia for the contest. And that was really nice. And while he was judging and at the contest, I took some side tours. One was to the Blue Mountains in Australia. They're called that because they really look blue as you're going towards them, and you wonder, how did they get to be so blue? But as you get closer, it changes to green, and you figure out It's from an aroma that's put off by the eucalyptus trees, which are really green, but when it hits the atmosphere, it makes the surrounding country look more blue, and the mountains actually look blue in the distance, and that's how they got their name. Well, that was a fun trip, and we saw koalas and the eucalyptus trees. We saw kangaroo and wallaby, and we even saw an unusual-looking lizard that had like a frilled collar running around. Our last night in Australia, they had a barbecue, and all of people were invited, wives and everybody, and we went to the barbecue. They had like 3 different carcasses of beef in 3 barbecue pits. One was well done, one was medium, and one was rare. And you lined up on which way you liked your meat fixed. And then they had all the trimmings. And one man that Ted had met there while we were there said, matey, I'm so glad I got to meet somebody from Texas. You know, I like Texas. Texas and Australia are a lot alike. We both have about 16 million people. We both have cowboys. We both have desert lands. And we both just really speak English and with an accent. And he laughed, and Ted laughed, and then he said, yeah. And Ted said, and we were both started by outlaws. And then the Australian laughed and slapped his leg and said, matey, what a bloke you are. It's been so great meeting you. Well, that was an interesting time, too. But on the way home, on the last day we were there, I fell on some cobblestone street and busted my ankle. So I went into the airplane in a wheelchair, and for that long flight home. And for several weeks afterwards, I was on crutches at the house. Probably had broken it, but they just bandaged it up so I could get on the plane to go home. So that was not taking me out in public wasn't always funny. Well, another thing that happened to me in 1988, I was becoming officers in my 80K sorority. In 86 to 88, the biennium, my chapter actually elected me as president-elect, and then 88 to 90, I was to be the president of the Delta Delta chapter of Alpha Delta Kappa. And so that was quite an honor for me. I did have a lot of duties as that, along with my teaching. I had to arrange for meetings, place to meet, speakers, put up a yearbook, and also our chapter was to be hostess of the district meeting that year. So we had to arrange that. We ended up renting a room at Nick's Restaurant in Waco, and then made decorations and fixed all that up, and had a speaker from Fort Worth that came down, and so that was worked out good. And the district began to elect me as an officer also. During my time in 80K, I served twice as chaplain of the district, 3 times as historian of the district, and 1 term, 4-year term of treasurer for the district 80K. I still belong, and this next year I will have been a member of Alpha Delta Kappa for 50 years. I make it till the spring of 26. That's been a great part of my life. The camaraderie with other teachers and meeting people from other cities and towns, because I did attend the state convention in Beaumont in 1988. I attended a state convention in Austin in 2001. I attended Boston International in 2002. And so it's been a part of my life all along. Well, the other interesting thing that really happened in the 80s, well, there were actually two. I think I had mentioned that Ted and Paula were divorced. If not, that happened actually in 88 when I was president of the 80K chapter. And we took a special trip down to Lee Lockwood Museum to see the Gonzalez cannon that my son had been instrumental in bringing to the museum. 86 and to 88 was a special time in Texas because Texas independence was 1836. And so 86 was like 150 years. We had an Easter egg hunt in their backyard with Gwen and DL and Joseph in the spring. But not too long after that, she asked him for a divorce. And she refused marriage counseling. And so they were divorced. And he gave her the house and the furniture and all that, and paid child support. And he moved in with us for a little time while he was finding an apartment, getting settled. After Ted got reestablished into an apartment and all, he met a young lady named Annette Horton Sanford, who herself was a divorcee with a little boy named Levi. And they began dating, and eventually they decided to get married, and they were married at the chapel in the church in Waco. And that Levi was 2 weeks older than DL, and so they were good friends. And that gave Ted 3 children, and Alicia and John had Joseph, so we now had 4 grandchildren, 1 girl and 3 boys. And then when 1989 came along, we got 2 more grandchildren. Alicia and John had Michael, who was born on 6/7/89, which was a very special numerical day. And because of that, the TV people came, and he was on TV that night. In fact, there was John, Alicia, baby Michael, and brother Joe standing there, and they were celebrities in Waco for the special birth date. And then Angela had a miscarriage in her first pregnancy. And with Ted and I had gone because she was going to have a D&C to make sure she was okay. And when that happened, she didn't come out of the surgery, and the doctor finally came out. We said, "What's wrong?" Because he said 45 minutes. It'd been over an hour. And he came out and said, "Has any of your people ever had a reaction to anesthesia?" And I said, "What's wrong? Is she okay?" He said, "She's had a reaction to the anesthesia, and it's something we call malignant hyperthermia. She's packed in ice in the ICU to bring her temperature down because it had spiked to 108. He said, "The good news is that about a year ago, they came out with a new antidote for this, and we happened to have bought it for our hospital, and we had it and gave it to her, and she's responding, and we think she's going to be okay." And she did come out of it, But he said, the doctor also said, before that, year ago, she would have died with this. And I did some research on the thing of malignant hyperthermia, and I did find out that that was probably, they think, the reason that a lot of Scandinavian people die in surgery. It's a reaction to the anesthesia, especially in younger people, and even the young boy from the Waco area died recently when he was having knee surgery from a football injury, and it was because of the anesthesia. And so that it kind of goes back to that. Angela's blood kin and any of her children are supposed to tell the doctor that before they have surgery ever, so they won't use the wrong anesthetic on them. Well, she did get pregnant again, and this time she delivered a little girl in October of 1989, the same year that Michael was born. And so at the end of the year of 89, Ted and I now had 6 grandchildren. We had 4 boys, DL, Levi, Joseph, and Michael, and 2 girls, Gwen and Taylor. And that was ending that decade. My last part will talk about the 90s, which was another busy time in our life.